It's deck days at Lowe's, and the savings are stacked. Right now, pros get 15% off all in-stock composite decking from top brands like Trex, TimberTech, and Decorators. Plus, get a free DeWalt 20-volt max 5-amp-hour battery when you buy a select DeWalt tool. The deck's stacked in your favor with brands pros trust. Our best lineup is here at Lowe's. Valid through 4/22 while supplies last. Selection varies by location.
Listen, all you New Yorkers. Taxi. Okay, man, we're looking around.
This is the 77 WABC minicast.
And we're honored and privileged to have with us is our special guest in this last segment, Jim Thompson, an expert in governmental relations and governmental affairs, senior person in the Republican National Committee, as well as a senior person in the New York State Party. Mr. Chairman, would you bring Mr. Thompson aboard?
Sure, thank you. And Jim, thank you for joining us. For our listeners, just to give you a benefit, I've known Jim for many years when he was the political director of the New York Republican Committee, and I was still served, but I first became the Brookhaven Town Republican chair. And then certainly in 2019, I became and ascended to the position of Suffolk County Republican leader. And Jim and I worked very closely together. In fact, we flipped a couple of Democratic seats together in the state Senate and in the state assembly here in Suffolk County to be successful. And now he's taking his wares and his expertises on governmental relations and intergovernmental affairs. So, Jim, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Chairman. And I want to congratulate you and your team on getting a guilty plea out of that vile human being.
Absolutely.
Who killed those young women. So kudos to your great district attorney, Ray Turney, and the whole team that you have in Suffolk County.
By the way, I'll go back to you in just a moment. I happened to see Ray Tierney today, who's a good friend and a great DA. I've known Ray for years. Suffolk is absolutely fortunate to have him as a district attorney. He's a brilliant lawyer. He's really organized that office. He's made a case that went fallow for years, and he and his team are to be commended. And it's because of people like Jesse Garcia who supported him for that race that we have a great DA out in Suffolk County. Back to you, Jesse.
Absolutely. Just to close that loop for our listeners, Ray Tierney secured a guilty plea from a serial killer, Rex Sherman, and brought to an end and a cold case that lingered for 13 to 15 years. And it was mired over that time over turf battles, political prosecutors, who was getting publicity, who was not getting publicity. And in short order, less than a year, Ray Tierney was able to secure an arrest. And then 2 years later, he was able to secure the guilty plea for 7 of the murdered victims, bringing closure for their families and their victims' families. But and we're going to have Ray on our show sometime in the future. Obviously, he's very busy and such. But outside of Suffolk County and Nassau County, where we have the safest counties in the state, if not the country, Jim, what the hell is going on in Albany? This one-party Democratic rule, the taxes they want to drop on us, the regulations they want to do to eliminate our home heating fuels and stop natural gas from going into new constructions. They want to try and give us this green new scam. And what along the way, because they know their policies like cashless bail is ill-fated and wrong and puts criminals back on the streets, they continue to change the election systems here in the state of New York to try and confuse voters. How do you see the Democratic operation going on right now in Albany with a budget that's going on, about 2 weeks late now when this show airs? What do you see the state of or the status of the Democratic-led Albany government, all 3 branches of government, the 2 chambers and the governor's mansion controlled by Democrats, and then of course just the dysfunction that comes out of Washington and the Democrats having Trump derangement syndrome, that they can't even support our troops, and this effort to rid ourselves of terrorism by eliminating the regime in Iran.
Well, there's a lot there, and I'll start with the budget. So they did an extender to the 14th. There is not a framework of an agreement between the governor, the majority in the Senate, and the majority in the Assembly, which is all controlled by Democrats. The Assembly and Senate one houses, because they do their own budgets in contrast with the governor, are more expensive than her $260 billion plan. And if you look like other states like Florida and Texas, we spend double what they spend. And here's the kicker, and here's the push-pull between the federal and the state government. We spend more than Florida and Texas combined on Medicaid spending. We saw what happened in Minnesota with the fraudulent daycare centers and what have you. There's ticking time bombs all over the state of New York when it comes to Medicaid spending, especially with the CDAP program with home health care and the amount of fraud, waste, and abuse there. So the fact of the matter is that they want to give away everything. And the Senate and Assembly Democrats want to tax everybody into oblivion. But as I'm sure a lot of people heard, Jamie Dimon came out and said, we're already moving our employees to Texas. We got about 11,000 there. So as much as everybody says nobody's going to leave New York City, where I'm sitting in the Javits Center at a conference, it's the greatest city in the world. But yes, you can tax people so that they move with their feet. And how many friends do we have that live now in Florida, Texas, Tennessee, South Carolina, Arizona? Because it's not just the weather, it's the business environment, the regulatory environment. If you open a restaurant, it's easier. If you buy a car, you're less taxed. If you buy a home, you're less taxed. And the fact of the matter is the school system used to be outdated and not up to our standards in the Northeast. That's changing because there's a lot of people moving in that demand great public schools like we have in Suffolk and Nassau counties, and certainly upstate New York where I live in Saratoga County. And you have a problem where the folks in the legislature have never had a real private sector job. They start out in the city council, and then they go up to Albany. They raise the pay in Albany so it could basically match what the city council pay is. And then when they are sick of Albany, then they go back to the city council when they're eligible to run again. And that's a problem. You need folks with real world solutions. And there's not a lot of great ideas coming out of Albany from the majority party. And unfortunately, because of the redistricting and gerrymandering, the Republican Party has been, basically eliminated in the legislature. And Assemblyman Ra and Senator Orr are dear friends, but, they have a very uphill battle.
Jim, let me just pick up on what you said, because you said that many of these Democratic elected officials in Albany come from the city council and they've never had a private sector job. And they continuously raise the salary, the public salary for them, and they're cutting off and they're limiting, I should say, or restricting outside income. I always thought that this was a citizen government. You come in, you bring your skills and your experience in the private sector or in other levels of service. You do your business and then you get out. I mean, what's happened to that type of idea and philosophy that our founding fathers created back in the day?
That's exactly what it was. And the state constitution, to your point, it was a part-time job, and it was to attract people to a part-time job, to an undesirable place of Albany, New York, and make sure that they serve and they bring their expertise, whether it's agriculture, whether it's in healthcare, whether it's in education, and then they leave Albany after they serve for a few years. And then, it was a part-time $79,000 job plus per diems, and then now it's like $140,000 to match the city council salary. And the fact is that because you're not getting those professional folks because the campaigns are so nasty, you're getting these career politicians that have never had to make a payroll or have had to make real decisions or run a town or a county government, and then they go to the legislature and they just think it's a utopian panacea of a tax and spend policy here in New York.
Well, it's interesting, Jim. There's an article by John Fund in the National Review, and he's saying one of the reasons that the cities are in trouble, and these are the cities where they're electing Democratic mayors, and this is across the country, not just talking about New York State, one of the big problems is that they're electing community organizers, social advocates who've never had a real job, never had real life experience, never signed the front of a check, only the back of a check. They come up there with their delusionary ideas that money is endless and you keep taxing and regulating people and it doesn't have a real world impact. This is very dangerous. And yet, in terms of elections, even to this day here in New York State, Jim, for a Republican to win in a statewide race, they have to get at least 35% of the vote out of New York City. And I'm very troubled by that. And by the way, I'm the House Democrat, but as Jesse will tell you, I try to be a common sense Democrat. I'm deeply troubled by having a one-party state. I want the Republicans to win control of the legislative branch and hopefully the governorship, because it's very, very important to push back against these dangerous policies. And Jamie Dimon is absolutely correct. People are voting with their feet. They're fleeing. And it comes a tipping point where you can't bring it back. What are your thoughts?
Judge, just like Ronald Reagan said, you didn't leave the Democratic Party, the Democratic Party left you. And that's true with so many Americans. Like I think of my father, who was a steel worker in a textile factory. And the fact of the matter is he was a Democrat because of his union membership, but working class Americans now vote Republican. And since Trump took over, the party became more populist as a whole. And the fact is that these elections, and you're right, it's more like 35% out of New York City, because you remember the magic number during the Pataki era was 30% in New York City, which Governor Pataki got in all of his elections, and he was successful. But because of the changing dynamics with all of our Republican friends that voted with their feet, we've lost 1 million voters upstate New York. And the fact is you need to get 35% because Lee Zeldin got 30% in 2022 governor's race, lost by 6 points, and the president lost by 8 points in 2024, and he got 30% in New York City. So, again, we're making inroads in the Asian community, Hispanic community, even the African-American community, which is a long time, certainly after the Obama, we have the first African-American president where they voted 90-10 against Romney. We make strides in reaching out to be the Big Tent party. But, again, the math is very difficult in the state of New York.
Well, there's a recent poll, there's an Emerson poll, and Jesse and I were talking about it before we went on air, Jim, which the Emerson poll said that amongst Asians, blacks, and Hispanics, Mondami, and how long is he in office? Was 100 days? He's now underwater significantly with respect to each of those groups. Does that give us hope?
It does. It does. The fact of the matter is Mayor Mondami, and I think Bill Maher, I hope I'm crediting the right person, he can elect, because he's such a polarizing force, he can elect Republicans all over the country. I was fortunate enough to get shipped to Louisiana by the RNC earlier in my career and to retire Mary Landrieu. And the campaign was not about Senator Cassidy, who was a very nice man. It was all about Barack Obama, and he polled, Al-Qaeda polled better than Barack Obama during 2014 in Louisiana. And the fact of the matter is that Trump, for the Democrats, turns out their voters in unbelievable amounts. But Mayor Mondami is going to be that figure for us in the midterms, and it's going to be the figure for us in the 2028 elections as well. Now, remember, we have local elections going on now for the first time because of very poor legislation coming out of Albany shifted all the local races to even years. And this was done not to protect the voter or make sure it's more accessible. It was to make sure their thought was even years mean more turnout of their voters so that they would win more elections. And maybe that's the case, maybe not. We're going to see. But the fact of the matter is there's more counties that vote Republican than Democrat. If you look at the map, whether it's President Trump, whether it's a governor's race, and I see that there's going to be these counties where, Bruce Blakeman's going to carry a county like Nassau County, and he's going to blow the doors off of Democratic local people that are running. We remember how Lee Zeldin ran so strong in Suffolk County. Would you want to have been a local Democrat that would have been on the ticket then? I don't think so. So, they think it's a great idea. It's all going to be great. when we have the seniors going through 2 pages of ballot, it's going to be interesting.
Let me ask you this question. And again, something Jesse and I and Eric Levine talk about. I respectfully submit that the large problems facing America is because of the Democratic Party policies, whether you're talking about domestic policy or you're talking about foreign policy and national security issues. I think it's because their policies are naive and they're dangerous. You've had the experience both as a state person as well as in the national scene. What are your thoughts? Am I overstating this?
Absolutely not. This is the issue that we have. When I served as a senior staffer in the state legislature, at that time we had a Republican majority. I don't know if you remember Senator Joe Bruno, God rest his soul,
I do.
who just had a birthday yesterday. There was common sense on you had to make sure that you protected law-abiding citizens, and it was a culture. And a lot of our suburban communities and rural communities have that. And we have the greatest city in the world. That's a thing we want to protect. And we want to make it safe for our families to come down here and do all the great things in New York City. And the fact is that in the 70s, when the city was going bankrupt, they said this place was ungovernable. There was a couple mayors, Giuliani and Bloomberg, that proved it was governable. And then they went back to the old way. And unfortunately, it's going to have to get so bad here that they're going to have to get somebody that's going to come back to fix everything. And that's where we're headed, and that's why you're seeing Mandami's polling numbers drop.
Jesse, we have a couple of minutes left. Would you close out with Mr. Thompson?
Sure. Jim, we talked a little bit about Albany, but let's now move forward to the midterms and how important it is for the Republicans to hold the House so that the last 2 years of President Trump's term can be for the America First agenda and not for a Democratic takeover that it leads to endless impeachments. In fact, they're already talking about removing him from office already. Where do you see the races going in the midterms right now as we sit here today?
All right, so there's a couple variables. The redistricting that started in Texas, it started in blue states. Watch the state of Virginia, where Governor Spanberger lied to the public and said she was not going to do the redistricting. She was going to keep the independent commission. And her map is basically 10 Democrats to 1 Republican. Currently, it's 6 Democrats, 5 Republicans in the state of Virginia. That's huge. It goes to the ballot, and that's going to happen this summer. So that's the most critical race, and that could decide the House of Representatives. New York State and our friend Nicole Maliotakis from Staten Island, they ruled in the courts that it was not legitimate to redistrict. They went too far, as they did during the redistricting period in 2022 and got beat back by the courts. So, and then the second thing is the generic ballot is a great indicator. Yes. It doesn't tell the whole story, but it's a great indicator. So right now the polls, if you take the aggregates, is between 2 and 6 points. Okay. So the story with Republicans is if you're even, you're leaving. So if the Republicans are even on the generic ballot, we're going to win an overwhelming number of seats. If we are down 5 to 10, we're going to lose the majority in the House. So the fact of the matter is, if gas prices stay about $4, we're going to have a really tough midterm, regardless of what the redistricting situation is. If we can get gas prices down, get this economy moving, and get affordability under control, then we should have a good midterm. Now, the United States Senate is talked about. There's only a third of them running. And for the Democrats to be successful, it's usually a state that the president loses by 10% or more. And it doesn't seem likely that there's enough of those states where they could pick up the United States Senate.
Well, Jim Thompson, a noted government relations expert, a key figure in the Republican National Committee as well as the New York State Republican Party. On behalf of Chairman Garcia and myself, we want to thank you for joining us once again. We look forward to having you back on the show. Your insights and your wisdom, your experience are very, very helpful to our audience, and we deeply appreciate having you here. Once again, this has been Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. Eric Levine will be back with us next week. We thank Mr. Thompson for joining us. As always, God bless you, God bless your families, and of course, God bless America. Thank you for listening.
Let the Record Show with Judge Richard Weinberg,
Suffolk County Republican Committee Chairman Jesse Garcia,
and essayist and commentator Eric Levine on the Red Apple Podcast Network.